folks. How's it going? Welcome to Serverless CrAIc. How are we getting on, folks? All good?
All good.
Yeah,
Aye, all good. All
all
good.
good.
Another,
Living the new AI driven life.
yes, another crazy week of learning everything from a fire hose.
Our host.
Yeah,
Social media has gone mental with
yeah,
all these AI stories. I
yeah,
think something has definitely happened in December 2025. The world's gone crazy.
yeah. Yeah, there's
Um,
definitely been a step change over the last couple of months about adopting some of these things.
Big time. So I think it's interesting. So again, we're kind of talking about AI and the value flywheel effect and how the two things come together. So I thought one thing we've talked about, we've even mentioned this in a few different presentations over the years, is AI as a commodity versus a differentiator. This is kind of linked to the sort of clarity of purpose phase, which I think is I've actually over the past couple of years done a lot of different maps to try and explain to people what AI is and what AI isn't. And it always goes back to your clarity of purpose. It's like, what are you trying to do?
Yep.
Um, and I think as you think of a worldly map, it's like I suppose the thing we've said for a long time is most companies should probably be consuming AI. So the AI itself is a commodity,
Yep.
not actually building LLMs. I mean, if you're building LLMs 4 years ago, then you're like OpenAI, like you're one of the market leaders, you're in Genesis. But if you're building AIs now, well, good luck to you.
Yep.
Um, so that's
Yeah.
I think you'd have to seen that. Probably maybe not so much this year, but maybe 2 years ago, somebody would just call an LLM and you show that to stakeholders and they think it was magic.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So there's definitely I think wordly mapping is definitely a nice technique to try and understand is the dependencies, like the thing you're offering. And then there's a value chain under it. And usually the LLM is provided by someone like OpenAI or whoever. And it's quite it's bottom right, you know.
I, a lot of organizations, maybe last year, the year before, would have, oh, we need to build our own agentic coding capability. So maybe create their own
Yeah.
internal GPT type functionality or internal code inferencing capability. And if they've invested millions in that, and then Cloud Code comes along and Cloud Code or Cursor or any of these other ones come along, you have all that sunk cost. And now there's a much better capability that's effectively a commodity or a product that you can leverage, but you have inertia to get there. So if you haven't mapped out your landscape and haven't understood what you're trying to achieve, you're going to invest a lot of money in things that aren't actually going to help you. And there's new capabilities that will be better suited to what you're trying to achieve. So
Mm.
it's a funny time because it is moving very rapidly as well. So your map would always be up. You need to keep your map updated every week.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's this one's an interesting one, and it's kind of like as you were kind of saying, it's another step up in terms of what we're seeing. I think it goes back to a lot of what we've talked about in previous podcasts and even with the book. Orgs that really understand their own value proposition and like understand that their own value chain. What they're doing at the minute is they're thinking about are they kind of weaponizing AI as part of their SDLC, improving their pipeline, improving their pathway, how they know how they're going to reach that value outcome quicker and how they're leveraging these AI kind of accelerators to do that, you know. I think companies that maybe don't have that clarity are probably going to be, doing things like that,
Yeah.
competing in the wrong areas or not,
Mm.
not really kind of, not driving towards what they need to, and they maybe are maybe a wee bit vulnerable to disruption or they're likely to kind of stay still.
Well,
So
there's
it's
actually,
I think there's two different things to think about. There is a company using AI to make their internal processes better. So
mm,
to make internally to make things work better, or adding AI into their product that they sell as a feature. Do
yeah.
you know what I mean? And for both, and some companies will actually do both. And for
Hmm.
both of them, I think the same question stands up. I mean, like, should you write your own LLM to help you code, or should you just buy Claude? You know what I mean? It's like it was the same thing with all the containerization. You know what I mean? Should you just use
Docker, or should you try and create your own containerization standard? I remember talking to companies who just thought it was better to create their own containerization standard because they didn't trust Docker.
Yep.
Stuff like that. Like, so it's like if you try and think that technology is cool, we should copy that, then good luck to you. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's what's the problem you're trying to solve, and then use the AI to maybe make that slightly better or solve it
Yeah.
better.
I think it's, and again, you can broaden that conversation out a wee bit. Like, I mean, in terms of, depends what lens you're looking at things through, right? Again, it's all about your managing your supply chain as an organization and sort of what dependencies you introduce. And
Mm.
I guess I guess there probably is a lot of nervousness and uncertainty around, is there going to be like an AI bubble? And, once that kind of pops, are you going to look at
Mm.
massive costs and things? So I guess there probably is nervousness there, as well. You probably got to navigate and you got
Yeah.
to work around and
Well,
I don't
the
know.
big thing, the big thing I've definitely seen companies getting worried about is training data.
Mm,
Because if you're pumping data into a model, either as part of your development life cycle, you're pumping in like Jira tickets and requirements and designs and code and stuff, or you're pumping in maybe your customer information as
mm,
part of making a decision in your product. And you want to be sure that that data doesn't pop up
yeah.
in like, some randomer doing a chat GPT.
Yeah. Your sovereignty, you
Yeah,
can never
so
set.
that's a massive piece. And I know I'm assuming now I don't know the internals of the model providers like, but I know that some of the enterprise editions will say that your
Mm,
data will never leave that kind of container,
mm,
But then that's or that tenant, but that's still there'll still be nervousness there, I'm sure.
mm,
I think with this, and we're talking about the clarity of purpose and mapping out your value chain and mapping out all the sort of components of your organization, you need to understand where AI could be dangerous to your organization, where your maybe your environments or your processes or your practices haven't been invested in for a number of years. And if you suddenly inject really powerful agentic AI, what challenges would that surface in your org? What security issues or performance issues or just general sort of are your processes and practices set up for the speed that these new capabilities can operate at? And I think knowing your landscaping, knowing where it's good to experiment with AI in your org, where not to experiment with AI in your org will be very valuable in
Mm,
the coming months and years. I think a lot of people will be embracing these capabilities without understanding their landscape, and they're
mm.
going to be exposed via security risks or via vulnerabilities or via just not being able to understand how to get value out of these powerful capabilities.
An uncontained chatbot, for example, who you may be able to prompt into doing things that you maybe don't want it to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah. I was reading a brilliant article this morning. It was about SRE and saying about AI. It was saying that uh it's like saying pretty much security need to sort of there's like a wake up moment because if you deploy an agent in a space that doesn't have good it doesn't the blast radius is too big. Do you
Yep.
know what I mean? Like you can't just write a policy to constrict the agent because it'll do whatever. You have to really contain it with blast radius like a tenant, like a proper SaaS model. And I
Mm,
was given the illustration that like an iPhone or like Android. Like
mm,
there's hard limits on when you put an application in. It's effectively sandbox from everything else. The
mm,
same for many things like an SDLC or like a product. Those boundaries are a bit woolly, not as tight. So you
mm.
could easily deploy AI as part of an SDLC and then it goes off and starts doing other things if you just let an agent run free. So it's a really interesting challenge. But again, it goes back to is it a differentiator or a commodity, and how well is the environment for the agent they're running? And again, it goes back, I think, the user needs. What's the thing I'm using this agent to help with?
Yep.
And if you're not clear on that, I'm not sure I'd be deploying it.
Yeah, and there's also from a like business product point of view, if you're going to incorporate AI into some of your business offerings or your product offerings, you know, is it actually uniquely differentiating for you, or would it be better just being a capability or feature with ChatGPT, for example, right?
Mm,
So you got to understand where things are going in your landscape to be able to properly position where you think AI will differentiate your business from everybody else. Right? You don't want
mm,
to invest millions into some new capability that's just going to be a Gemini capability that's just available to everybody, right? Within weeks. So understanding
Mm.
where things are going, and even just starting to predict and guess where the investment's going to go, like ChatGPT apps and other things that are coming out, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's again for most companies, like a lot of companies will understand what their USP is and sort of what value it is they're kind of bringing to the customers and whatever. And you'd like to think what it will do is it'll raise the bar, like it'll raise expectation for consumers and companies will be kind of giving consumers more and more features and and probably lots of new kind of good things. So again, you'd like to think it raises sort of competition and kind of opens up new kind of areas and you know new horizons, I think, for organizations. But as you say, the first kind of stage in that is getting out of your own way, right? And we talk about all that in the book in terms of like next best action, configuring your environments, understanding your value chains, and kind of creating like a safe organization for this stuff to kind of evolve into. I still think that's all 100%, required for sure.
Mm.
Um,
I think there's a really nice I heard someone saying it last week, or heard, I read someone saying it on LinkedIn about it's like remember a couple of years ago in AWS you go to Reinvent and it's like they bring out some feature and it's like, oh, you get a bunch of companies groaning and just dying in the corner of the keynote
yeah.
because they're just bringing out a feature that kills off an entire sector, you
Mm,
know? That's starting to happen with some of the AI things.
Yep.
There's
mm,
definitely tools that I was paying for a year or two ago. I'm thinking I'm
mm.
gonna stop paying for that now because I
Yep.
could just get that out of Gemini or whatever or Claude.
Well,
So you can see that happening, like, and it's the same if you're a company thinking we're going to bet the farm on an AI enabled X. It's nothing to stop OpenAI doing that as well, you
mm.
know. So it's really, really interesting. It's definitely it's a new platform that's emerging. Just
Yep.
like AWS was a new platform, there's a new sort of AI platform emerging that it's the moat that some of these model providers have.
Yep.
Mm. I am. It's weird. I think, with these kind of industrial level changes, your even your definition of what commodity is probably has to evolve as well, right? Because I think maybe you're maybe looking at different dimensions or different kind of variables in terms of how you evaluate what a commodity is versus, what you might view as a commodity 2 years ago is no longer a commodity. It's probably something there you've a wee
Yeah.
bit more ability to kind of navigate.
Well, have
I
you
think
heard word that I see about SaaS companies? I
Mm,
think I see it on Twitter somewhere. People are saying like, well, instead of just paying for that SaaS service, I'll just vibe code my own version over the
mm,
weekend,
yeah.
yeah.
which is
I
madness, of
was
course.
going to
But
mention that as well. That's when people don't understand their value chain and don't understand their landscape. And it's like, oh, well, just vibe code this HR system because
Yeah.
Workday or whatever is too expensive,
yeah,
and
just vibe code Salesforce.
not realizing that there's like you know hundreds of millions of dollars invested in building out capabilities and features and rules and compliance and all of
Mm,
the things that you need for critical business systems. And your vibe coded version, yeah, it might solve your particular need for that particular thing, but good luck trying to get it through any sort of compliance or governance
forget about it.
or audit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have seen kind of stories where, these solutions have been adopted and then there's all these kind of these weird or kind of unique sort of nuances or issues or defects or bugs where it's just not quite, and then it just causes so much disruption to the consumer, because then it's not quite there and then you lose trust in it because then you're kind of going, you know, um,
Yeah, and I think that all the is your org set up for that? Is your IT and security set up for adopting all of these vibe coded systems that suddenly become critical to the business succeeding?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. So I mean, I think there's a really interesting question there about, what are you applying AI to? And are you just effectively selling OpenAI
Yeah,
with a couple of scripts on top of it or a couple of prompts? So I think understanding your user needs and what is really a differentiator in what you're doing.
yeah.
But then what should you do about that? Like, I mean, is there a moat? Like we should never let AI execute this business process or what would you say would be a a good way to approach this? So maybe we can find out what your differentiator is.
Well, I think if you map out your business processes or your value chain, there's probably parts of your business that for risk reasons or regulatory reasons or just it'll be catastrophic if it got it wrong. You don't want to be vibing and sort of messing around with things that are especially dealing with people or dealing with your personal sort of stuff, like payroll, for example, right? you don't want to mess that up, right? So you need to be very clear about where it's good to experiment and where you really don't want to be experimenting, right? Maybe in the future months and years, once you have a lot more comfort and controls and all the observability and all the tests and all the things, then you can start dipping your toes into those more critical business functions. But I think you need to be very clear that there's certain parts of your business that you do not want to be experimenting with in a sort of ad hoc fashion.
And even I think even the like we talked a lot about the North Star framework in the book itself. And even the discipline they work that out, work through that and figure out your leading and your lagging metrics. I mean, that doesn't really change.
No.
One thing that does change is the speed.
Yep.
You can have a much faster feedback loop. The speed of decision making has to be really fast.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's no longer acceptable for the product manager to go off and do like 6 months of discovery and faff about and then say, okay, team build this. I mean, you can go through those feedback loops really quickly, and I think it's more important than ever that engineering teams are in the middle of those feedback loops. They need to be part of them. It's the idea of just handing work down the line. Like it was never a good thing, but it's even worse now.
Yeah. And especially if your engineering teams are embracing a lot of the AI sort of DLC or SDLC capabilities, they're able to knock out capabilities and features in minutes and hours, right? So their sprints may have gone from 2 weeks now down to maybe 2 days, right? If your decision making feedback loop isn't set up for that level of speed, then you're going to grind to a halt because all these, hey, we've built that capability, we've built that feature, it's in market. What do we do next? So you're going to need to have the rest of the org to be able to support that level of automation, speed and value delivery, right? So if you have you've nailed your SDLC, all the surrounding supporting process practices and rules need to be able to adapt to that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the hard, like, I think that's how things are evolving, so it's really important you understand how you measure progress and success. And, you mentioned there, Dave, your lead and lag kind of measures. But then again, old techniques that have been around for a long time, your North Stars, your traceability between the work and the kind of the profit and then or the lack of profit. And other kind of techniques like impact mapping, like, again, getting ahead of that stuff. Because if you are kind of able to cut through, really quickly, okay, well, that didn't work. What are we moving on to next? What are we moving on? Again, you can maybe get ahead of certain things. So it does change, but again, I think it requires a bit more discipline as well, in terms of your structure and your flow.
But the sort of the good thing about the AI tooling across the board is it can help you put those things in place. It can help you think, it can help you craft and refine your North Star, your impact maps, your Worley maps. So you can co-pilot them with some of the more powerful models to help you refine. What are your key KPIs? What are your input metrics? What are the leading and lagging measures? What is your component value chain? So you can use the AI to help you improve your feedback loops and your process and your critical thinking as well. As long as you just don't over rely on it for doing all of this, then
you can't outsource your critical thinking.
No.
Plus, you have to be very clear on what your context is. I mean, if we're all in the same company, I can say to you, I'm thinking of doing this, and what do you think? And we all have a shared context with the model. You have to write it down and say, I want to ask you a question, and here's the context I want you to use. And that's not as easy as it sounds.
No, it is not.
It's very difficult, and that will make or break this stuff.
Yeah, and that's a big enabler for all of this. If you have well-defined context, if you understand what your processes, practices, what your standards are, and you're able to codify them, then you can feed them not only for people, but into the AI.
Well, the scary thing that you'll see in a lot of the demos and even on the LinkedIn type things, a lot of the things you'll see is just, it's one person type thing.
Yeah.
one individual kind of working on one sort of use case or one front end application. You very rarely see examples of distributed systems or, like big kind of sort of complex software initiatives and projects. And I think that does require a wee bit of structure and a wee bit of kind of coordination, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
And you're starting to see that even in some of the agentic AI sort of platforms and frameworks. They're starting to bake in like organizational design theory into what how the agents are collaborating and communicating, because the same struggles you have with human
Between agents.
organizations will be
Yeah.
apparent in agentic organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah,
so
your
it's
man, Ethan Mollick, he said that the weekend, and like I actually replied and said he said something like what did he say? Organizational design applies to agents. Just use that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, like don't be saying that's not problematic. You know what I
mm,
mean? There's a huge amount of misunderstanding about organizational design and good practice. That's it's not a solved problem.
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. 100%.
Very good. So there's definitely a flywheel element to this, I think, and I think like I mean. I think as we've said forever, if you don't understand your ecosystem and your value chain, adding AI is not going to help you.
Yep.
You know, if you're kind of confused about what you're doing and who you're doing it for, AI will just make you more confused.
Yeah. So I
If
think
you have a really good understanding, the AI will help sharpen your thinking.
100%. So I think invest in getting your flywheel turning, and then accelerate it with AI. But
Yeah,
do the hard yards first.
Yeah, I think what you'll find is, there's such a proliferation of tooling and capabilities now that everyone's off doing something slightly different. So if you don't have that structure in place and that sort of those mechanisms around flow,
yeah,
it can be very hard to kind of align and create momentum.
yeah.
But I do think there's no option to sit on the sidelines for this stuff now. You need to
No,
be in there. You need to explore it. You need to adopt it. You need to try it, and you need to be constantly
Yeah.
relearning everything to keep ahead of it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
was saying to a bunch of people last week, learn the technique. Don't worry about a tool. Just get a tool that works, but
Mhm.
focus on the technique. Don't be getting into this tool is better than that tool.
Yeah.
They're all the same, but the technique is truly a differentiator.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's the
100%.
crack. Sure, we'll leave it at that. That's an interesting one. We've plenty to talk about anyway.
Oh
So
yeah.
give us a click on serverlessedge.com on LinkedIn or YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
All right, well,